Today I'm going to talk about disease management programs for Bailey II peanut in North Carolina. So the original Bailey was released in 2009. It became widely available for planting in about 2013. It has resistance to leaf spot, primarily early leaf spot, tomato spotted wilt virus, CBR, sclerotinia blight, and stem rot. It's a high yielding and very consistent performing cultivar, and as a result has been very popular. At its peak, about 80% of the peanut acres in North Carolina were planted to Bailey. It does have some disadvantages. It has a slightly small seed size, a large canopy, and it's not high oleic, which is the direction the industry is going. So several high oleic cultivars have been released since Bailey, including Sullivan, Wynn, and Emery. Among those, Sullivan has been the most successful, and currently about 50% of the seed certified in North Carolina is for Sullivan. Bailey II was released in 2017. It's a backcross to Bailey for the high oleic trait so that we could have a high oleic version of Bailey. Widespread availability for growers is expected in 2022. In PVQE trials, Bailey II has performed as well or better than Bailey, the original Bailey or Sullivan. And the disease responses in Bailey II are expected to be similar to Bailey or Sullivan. Currently, for disease control programs on Bailey, Sullivan, and most other Virginia types, the recommendation is to start programs at R3. Usually that will happen somewhere around 50 to 55 days after planting, by using a developmental milestone that helps to account for variable planting dates, which has been an issue in our area in the past few years. Starting at R3 will result in a spray program of about 5 sprays unless a spray is skipped due to advisory. And at least one of those 5 sprays would be for stem rot control, usually applied at about 60 days after planting. In some seasons, 6 sprays may be needed if protection is desired either earlier in the season or going on into later into September, October due to weather, hurricanes, or late planting. We have had some concerns, especially with leaf spot control emerging over the past few years. Primarily among these is the Virginia types, including Bailey, have lost whatever resistance they've had to leaf spot. Of course, they haven't really lost their resistance. What's happened is that we have selected late leaf spot populations that can attack these cultivars, and now late leaf spot is our predominant leaf spot disease in North Carolina. We've also had weather more favorable than it used to be, or more consistently for leaf spots than it has been in the past. We've had, as I've mentioned, concerns with hurricanes in several of the past seasons, very much so in 2017 and 18. And finally, we've confirmed QOI resistance in leaf spot populations in North Carolina. So in thinking about disease control programs that would be suitable for Bailey once growers are able to plant it, we're thinking, do we really need to have 6 sprays for leaf spot control? If we're going to stick to 5 sprays, should we be starting earlier than we have been, or do we need to hang on a little bit so we've got sprays towards the end of the season? And how do leaf spot control programs in general compare on Bailey and Sullivan? So to look at this, set up experiments last year at Rocky Mount and Lewiston comparing Bailey and Sullivan. So we had 2 locations, the 2 cultivars, 4 spray programs that would include the untreated control, set up in a split plot and planted in about mid-May in both locations. So this is the spray programs that we tested. We looked at a 6 spray season, supposing you needed to go to 6 sprays, starting about 45 days after planting and ending at 120 days after planting. 5 spray program, you could start it early at this 45 days after planting, and if you do this, then that will mean that the spray program is going to end early as well, so that you're not going to have protection going into September. We also looked at a 5 spray starting late program, so that in this case we skipped first spray started the spray program at what would normally be the second spray spot, and this allows you to have more protection later in the season. And then that was compared to an untreated control. Here's weather data for Lewiston in 2019. The weather was pretty similar for Rocky Mount as well. Along this line here, you're seeing the maximum temperature each day, so it was a pretty hot summer, many days over 90 degrees. The bars are precipitation events, and the dots indicate spray advisories. If the dot is at 1, that's a spray today advisory. If the dot is down here at 0, that's a no spray today advisory. Through the summer, we only had 6 days without a spray, a 6-day gap without a spray today advisory through the summer. There was some dry weather in late May and early June. This meant that some growers ended up planting late. Although in our trials we planted in mid-May, and we had 3 weeks of abnormally dry and hot weather starting in mid-September, so sort of beyond this graph. And in fact, we had a 100-degree day on either the 1st or 2nd of October. So this hot weather that happened late in the season may have suppressed some of our final disease ratings. First, looking at the results from Rocky Mount, where we had low to moderate disease pressure. Here are the comparisons of the means for Sullivan and Bailey across all programs. These means would include the untreated control. So you can see that for anything we measured, whether it was leaf spot, defoliation, plant condition, stem rot incidence, or yield, Sullivan and Bailey were very, very similar to each other. There were no measurable differences between Sullivan and Bailey, no cultivar effect. We also saw no interaction between spray programs and cultivars. Spray program results were the same for both cultivars, statistically speaking, and I will be showing spray program results averaged across cultivars. So here's those results for Rocky Mount. Here's the 6 spray program here. 5 sprays started early, 5 sprays started late, and the untreated control. So you can see that we reach quite high levels of leaf spot in the untreated control, although defoliation is somewhat behind what it would be in a really severe situation. Looking at the different spray programs, they all were different from the untreated control, but very similar to each other. Here are the yield data for Rocky Mount, and none of these yields were different from each other, including the non-treated control. Here is the yield for the 5 spray early program, 5 sprays late, and the 6 spray program. So those yields were equal statistically speaking, but you can see there's more variability in the 5 spray programs than in the 6 spray program. Now looking at the Lewiston data, this has much higher disease pressure than at Rocky Mount. And again, the means, these are means across all spray treatments. So these means do include the untreated controls. So they're high for the disease variables. But again, you see that Sullivan and Bailey are very similar to each other for leaf spot, defoliation, plant condition, stem rot incidence, and yield. And so there were, again, no measurable differences between Sullivan and Bailey. And as in Rocky Mount, spray program results were the same for both cultivars, so there were no interactions. And again, I'm going to show you spray program results averaged across cultivars. Here are disease progress curves for Lewiston for both leaf spot and defoliation. These arrows here indicate times that sprays were applied towards the end of the season. So this spray here would have been the last spray for the 5 spray started early program, and as well would have been applied to the other 2 programs. And this arrow here indicates the last spray that was applied either in the 6 spray program or in the 5 spray started late program. You can see very high disease pressure, rapid increase of leaf spot in the unsprayed control. The gray line here is for the 5 spray program started late. The blue line is for the 6 spray program, and the orange line is for the 5 spray started early program. As you can see, disease control was maintained very well until at the middle of September, and then we began to see disease increase and separate a little bit among treatments. The defoliation data look very similar with a little bit of delay relative to the leaf spot, and very close to each other, but we are seeing a little over 20% defoliation in the 5 spray started late program, and that's a high enough level of defoliation that could result in yield loss. Here are the spray program results averaged again across cultivars. You can see very high levels of leaf spot, and correspondingly high levels of defoliation, the untreated control, very poor plant conditions, and very high levels of stem rot incidence and plant death in the untreated control. Looking at the spray programs, the 6 spray program and the 5 spray started early programs are very similar for leaf spot, defoliation, plant condition, and stem rot. The 5 spray programs started late program tended to lag behind the others for leaf spot, defoliation, and plant condition. Not so for stem rot. Here we see the yield at Lewiston. This is the 5 spray started early, 5 spray started late, and 6 spray programs. So these are all not different from each other and much better than the untreated control. So under the 2019 conditions, which again had that very hot, dry fall, so we did not hit a year where we could see what we really needed as far as a fungicide spray late in the season, we found no differences at all between Bailey and Sullivan for leaf spot, defoliation, stem rot, or yield. Program results were very similar for the 2 cultivars with no interactions, and management practices that we're currently using on Sullivan and Old Bailey seem to be suitable for Bailey II. Under 2019 conditions, we also saw that the 3 spray programs we looked at did not differ from each other under low to moderate disease pressure like we saw at Rocky Mount. Under higher disease pressure like we saw at Lewiston, if we were going to go with 5 sprays, starting early was better than starting late. There was no benefit to a 6th spray in the hot, dry September we had in 2019. So in high-risk situations, we might require 6 sprays. It looks like you'd be safe to use 5 sprays started early and be prepared to apply a 6th spray in the case of threatening weather or delayed digging. So that wraps it up. It also wraps up my career. So I'd like to take this time to thank David Jordan, especially my co-author on this paper, the staff at the Peanut Belt Research Station and the Rocky Mount Research Station, who provided a tremendous amount of help with this and all the other work I've done over the years, the support of the North Carolina Peanut Growers Association and the National Peanut Board, and all my friends and colleagues who've been so helpful and kind over the years.